The international break is underway, and it doesn't mean that we haven't got stories to discuss because there's controversy, contradiction, and some interesting tweets to talk through. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much as always for joining me. And indeed, I hope that you've had a strong start to your week and that the international break is already treating you well. As mentioned, we're going to be doing shows throughout the week, taking a break on Saturday and Sunday before moving back into the swing of things on Monday of next week. So do stick with us over the course of these weekdays and through this international break as well. I know that it is a period of somberness, of boredom, maybe for some, but it is also a period where we can appreciate maybe some time off and just bask in the glory as well of sitting top of the Premier League table. Good morning to all of those joining us live in the chat box. Thank you so much as always for doing so. I really appreciate you being here. It is greatly appreciated. Good morning to Matt, to Glenn, to Black Shine, to Pisa. We got Steve and Trina and Ken. Good morning to you, to Tom and Maximius and Barry and Arasilki and Claire. Good morning to Martin and other Martin, Pat, Mohammed and Evan and Rich. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much as always for tuning in and joining me. It is greatly appreciated indeed. Yes, let's crack on with today's. I've got a couple of lines for you, which I kind of want to get into some discussion, and these are going to bleed, I think, into part two as well, because I think they are worthy of some debate and discussion as well. Now, yesterday, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know if the X Twitter feeds is serving my tweets up to as many people as feasibly possible at the moment, but I reckon the last 3 days, 3 different tweets have gone utterly mental, like ridiculously crazy. So I obviously tweeted about the atmosphere at the game on Saturday. That tweet has been seen by more than 800,000 people, which is, again, absolutely mad. And then yesterday, I highlighted, of course, the frustration, I think, of the comments made by Jamie Carragher about Enzo Maresca's celebration, and his celebration being something that Jamie absolutely loved to see. And the hypocrisy that exists, the contradiction that exists, because you will remember back in 2024, when Martin Odegaard celebrated with a picture of Stuart McFarlane, Arsenal's lead photographer, and the quotes that we got from Jamie in the wake of that, minutes after the full-time whistle, were just get down the tunnel. You've won a game, 3 points. You've been brilliant. Back in the title race. Get down the tunnel. I'm serious, honestly. Those are the comments of Jamie Carragher after Martin Odegaard was pictured by Sky cameras celebrating with Stuart McFarlane in the wake of a massive 3-1 victory, of course, which was a huge boost at the time for Arsenal's title chances. When Chelsea beat Liverpool at the weekend, and Enzo Maresca, of course, with the winning goal in the last seconds of the game, ran down the touchline to celebrate with his teammates, Nestaval, of course, in particular. Jamie said that was a victory that does a lot in terms of the manager. I loved the manager's celebration. I loved him running down the line. I can't believe he can't come out and speak to us. That's ridiculous. You want to hear from him. For me, his biggest result that will build a connection with the supporters. I said a lot last year. I think he's a really good coach. Every time they come up to against Liverpool, they've had a plan. So there just seems to be kind of this whole one rule for one rule for another about how teams can celebrate. And by the way, it's not just me that thinks this. It's other contemporaries in the game. I remember Ray Parlour being asked on TalkSport about the contradiction of Jamie Carragher's comments about Liverpool's comeback against Luton last season, and in particular, or the season before last, sorry, and in particular, kind of how he celebrated Liverpool's comeback against Luton. And then, of course, this happened just weeks following comments made against Arsenal and their celebrations over Liverpool. And Ray Parlour described it as hypocrisy, as well. So it's not just me And it's not just members of the media or fans, it's other contemporaries and pundits and former players, of course, as well, who subscribe to highlighting the contradiction that is going on there. And I wrote a piece about this yesterday because international breaks often throw up chances to kind of write more creative lines. And it's a topic that I feel strongly about because we get the sense, don't we? We get the sense that Arsenal kind of sometimes get spoken about in inconsistent terms in opposed to kind of other clubs as well. And I think that's always worth highlighting when the opportunity arises to do that, if indeed we notice it on a regular occasion. And I think we do notice this on a regular occasion. So we will discuss this with you all and get some more of your thoughts, of course, in part 2. Ames just says, if it was Arteta, say no more. Abdul Hakim says, Jamie Carragher, the chameleon only changes when it's not Arsenal. Yeah, I mean, Joe says, imagine if that was Arteta. Oh my goodness, the outcry would be immense. To be fair to Jamie, what I will say is that I think that his comments about Arteta's celebration at Luton, if you remember, Arteta kind of like went a bit mad. He did say in those moments, I will give him credit, that he did say kind of those things are in the moment. But my issue is I think you have to be consistent across all of the actions of a celebration. You can't love a manager running down the touchline, which was far greater, of course, in terms of exuberance than what Arteta did at Luton. Arteta barely went outside his touchline at Luton. But Enzo running down to the other end and jumping on his players in the corner, getting sent off, because that is, of course, against the rules as they stand at the moment. To just Odegaard picking up a camera or being given a camera to take a picture of Stuart McFarlane. I just think that there's that inconsistency there. So while to be fair to him, you got to give him the credit that he speaks about Arteta in kind of, more understanding terms in the Luton incident. But it's just that lack of consistency across all examples that I think Arsenal fans, myself, others, and other pundits and contemporaries in the sport get irked by as well. Because I think it's got to be one rule across it all, right? You either love celebrations of all kind or you don't. And you say that in any case, they should be dialing it down. You can't love exuberance in one case and not in another. I just don't think that's very consistent whatsoever. The second story that I want to discuss with you surrounds Viktor Gyokeres and the debate. And there is debate. And to kind of prove the debate, I highlight that there is some division at the moment. And, I like to think that here we have a pretty kind of balanced community of people. And the question I've got for you is, have you got concerns about Viktor Gyokeres at the moment? That's my question for you. Have you got concerns about Viktor Gyokeres? That's the simple question. Yes or no? Have you got some concerns about him right now? His contribution, his game, his integration, anything? To give you kind of my view, I would say I've got a couple of concerns, just a few. I've got some concerns about his game. I've got some concerns about his integration. I've got some concerns about if our system is going to work with him. And they're concerns that existed before he arrived. We talked about that on the channel all through the summer. I had concerns about whether he was the right fit. I had concerns about whether or not he was going to be the right centre forward for us to go for and to invest in the team. So I'd be voting yes if I could vote on that poll, for instance. But I know that a lot of people don't have concerns and feel that it's too early to have concerns. As I say, my concerns exist from the summer. My concerns exist from before he signed, and those concerns haven't been dissuaded as of yet, of course, because he is yet to dissuade those concerns that I had at the beginning and during that period when we were talking about him arriving at Arsenal. But at the same time, I'm equally as delighted by what I'm seeing still, because he is putting in so much effort. That the effort that we're seeing, the runs he's making, the commitment he's got to this role. Arteta couldn't speak more highly about him right now. There is a real sense that, that he will click. He will adjust. Arsenal will adapt. And over time, we will find ourselves in a position where he does fit. But obviously, Sam Dean, colleague of mine, friend of mine at The Telegraph, wrote a piece yesterday on The Telegraph. Obviously, Sam's just been welcomed back for some period of time off. Massive congratulations to to Sam on his new fatherhood, of course. And Sam, in one of his first pieces back, obviously, it'll be an opinion that if you know Sam or you listen to Sam on Charles Watts' Inside Arsenal Patreon show, you'll know that these are views of Sam's that have existed for, again, a long time. These aren't new. These are views that existed prior to him arriving at Arsenal, have continued from him arriving at Arsenal, that there are concerns about, his style and whether he fits the role. And he wrote a piece yesterday on the Telegraph around, the title of it is Arsenal fans are split on Gyökeres, and here is why. And it's 10 games, 3 goals, a growing divide in the fan base. It has been a curious start for Viktor Gyokeres at Arsenal. His performance metrics have declined massively from last season, stats, of course, included in the piece. But how much does that matter is the question. Does that matter? And Sam answers that. If you read the piece, or you have access to read the piece, you'll see it's a very balanced piece as well. But there was some backlash to this article, was some backlash to the idea of even writing this article. And while I empathize with that, and I empathize with the position of, Arsenal are top of the league right now, they're flying high, they've had a very impressive start to the season. Is this the time to be writing pieces about question marks about things? And to that, I would say, yes, I do, because I actually think that if you are top of the league, and you're already in this position where you can get even better, I'd say yes. It's not a piece that's scathing. It's not a piece that's like damning of Gyökeres, damning of Arsenal. It's a piece that asks the question of, even though there are some things and there are some concerns in the fan base at the moment about Gyökeres, 25% of you have voted on that poll, which for me, I thought it was going to be lower than that. I thought there was going to be less people voting yes on that poll. I really did. Considering we are top, considering we are in such a good place, and considering it's you, the TGT community, I thought it was going to be less than 25%. So it actually does shock me at the moment that 25% of the 170 people that have quickly voted on that poll have got concern. It's going up 26%. I am surprised by that, because it does show that there is some division. It does show you that there's some thoughts that of concern, whereas others are more than happy to give him a lot more time and not have any concerns right now. I'm in the camp that has a little concern. And that's because I want the best for us. I want the best for Arsenal. I want us to achieve big things. I think as long as he keeps wearing that amazing tracksuit he's got on in that picture, I think he'll be fine. As will anybody else adorned with it. Although I must say that I am very jealous of the kind of the Fly Emirates logoing on the matchday shirts and the matchday jackets that the ones on sale don't have. But anyway, I digress. What I think Gyökeres has, of course, in his locker at the moment and on his side is time. He has time on his side, and he has a very good team around him on his side. And he has a team that, despite him perhaps not being quite sharp enough, quite strong enough, not quite producing the numbers that he was last season in a very different environment, he's in a fortunate place because he has an amazing group of players around him that, in spite, of course, of maybe a couple of struggles and a couple of shortcomings on his part, it doesn't necessarily matter too greatly right now. And also, he is contributing with his runs, with his energy, with his contribution in terms of commitment, in terms of what he's doing to link up play, in terms of dragging defenders out of position, in terms of his pressing and his energy. He's having to play pretty much every single game because we only have him at the moment, while Kai Havertz has suffered a really unfortunate long-term injury and he's been basically facing a trial by fire. But what I want to do is, around this topic particularly, is I think it's important. Like, if you think about the last story we just covered, I think that's a really good example of looking at what is, for me, a contradiction and it furthers the narrative that Arsenal kind of gets spoken about differently in the wider context of punditry in the media. But I think that maybe because that happens so often, some of us maybe can fall into the trap of thinking that a well-meaning piece of media, a well-meaning question, a fairly asked question, and a balanced argument can sometimes fall into, mistakenly, a crowd that we shouldn't be putting it into the same crowd of. That's the point I'm making here, is that I don't think that energy should be applied to when people ask questions like this, but instead it's when people are more absolute about things, are conclusive about things so early on. If this piece was all about, how Arsenal have those that criticize the idea of signing Gyökeres have been vindicated by his performances so far this season, and Berta's been proven wrong and Arsenal should have gone for Šeško and pushed harder, that would be ridiculous. That would be silly. That would be the type of piece, that would be the type of analysis that we would be rightly criticizing, if you know what I mean. But that's not what's going on here. And I think just sometimes I thought it was good to balance these two stories next to one another, because I think while there is definitely reason to be skeptical about how Arsenal can be talked about in the media, I think also we need to check ourselves. I think we need to check our energy, check our aim, check our focus about what we kind of aim and who we aim, perhaps our frustration and suspicion over at times, because I don't think that was the meaning behind Sam's piece. And that's why I wanted to talk about it on this morning's show. But we're going to get your thoughts in part two, which is going to come up right after this. Now, of course, if you would like to be balanced in the security that is provided to you online, there is indeed only one perfectly balanced and secure system that I would recommend you to try. And that is, of course, NordVPN. You can get a significant discount off indeed a 1 or a 2 year plan of the best VPN service on the market, with 4 months extra thrown in free for that 2 year plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner and getting yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2 year plan. If you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, you get a 30-day money-back guarantee. But this is the #1 service to change your geodigital location on your laptop, your mobile, your tablet, whichever device indeed that you would like to use that is supported by Nord in any of the territories that are indeed supported by Nord. You can protect yourself online, give yourself that internet security, and shield your data from snoopers and criminals. There is only one choice, so make the right one with NordVPN. That's nordvpn.com/Gooner. Right, let's go to part two and your questions, of course, in the chat box. And seeing already, it seems that there are indeed quite a lot of thoughts around this. So let's have a look, shall we, at some of your thoughts. Lassa says, I don't care about the 200 games. It's a team sport, and Gyökeres would indeed be good to get better confidence and score more goals for us. I think that the whole 200 game idea around the penalty for Saka, this is another debate that's going on at the moment. I don't know why people are putting so much emphasis on this right now. I really don't. I really can't. I'm really struggling, if you like, to understand why there's more emphasis on this. I mean, I did see a clip of Curtis talking about this, or from his watch along, going a little bit viral, but I don't know. I don't know at all. I just feel that it's a little bit too much emphasis being placed on this, for me at least. And I would look into and take a step back. I always say to you, don't I? I'm like, take a step back. Just think hard about it. Because while you may not care about the 200 games, it's not really about you. We've got to think about the broader context of the team. And there are arguments for Gyökeres taking that penalty and giving him something of a kind of a boost. But what I would say is that on a moment where Saka's returning from injury, if you remember back to last season when Saka returned from injury, he didn't really recover his form after he came back. He wasn't delivering as often, as frequently. Well, now we've seen him score against Olympiacos. He's now scored in this game from the penalty spot, after obviously scoring an offside goal in the first half, which was only just slightly ruled out for offside, only slightly didn't time his run correctly. And now we've got arguably Arsenal's most influential player of the last however many seasons on a scoring run and in great form as a result of that too. So I think as much as you can make an argument for Gyökeres, you can make an argument as much so for Saka. And not only that, but of course, it being kind of that particular notable game, his 200th game, his 100th goal involvement. You know, it takes him onto a record with Thierry Henry, of course, as well. I just think that outweighs the whole Gyökeres argument. I don't think a penalty goal changes anything for Gyökeres here. Because I don't think that is the aspect of Gyökeres' game that I don't think it's necessarily about confidence for Gyökeres, because he's already scored. He got a penalty against Leeds. You know, that didn't change necessarily anything too greatly for him. He scored then against Nottingham Forest as well. again, didn't really change too much about kind of like his ability to score goals for Arsenal in this stage. I think it's more about this idea that he just needs to be able to be found in the box more effectively. And when he is, he needs to be more clinical in those moments. He had a great opportunity, I thought, to score in the game against West Ham. He didn't take it. I think he had another great opportunity against Olympiacos. West Ham. Against Olympiacos. To be fair, he did have a great chance in the air aerially against West Ham that he didn't take. And he had one against Olympiacos as well that he skied over the bar. So, I think it's more about in these open play moments where it will matter more for Gyökeres, than it will do more so from that. But to be fair to Lasser, he says, you are right about that, Tom. I didn't see that point of view. And I really appreciate anybody who can kind of hear a different viewpoint and go, fair play. That shows real growth. That's real maturity, and if you can do that, you're on a higher plane for me, certainly. Yaya says, players care about these records. It's his career. He can look back and say this happened. Victor will get the chances and Saka will repay him 100 times across the entire time that he's at Arsenal. I think you're absolutely right. The Trading Arch says, the goal can't fix technical and physical flaws. Akintobi says, I'm not as confident in Saka taking a penalty as I am in Gyökeres. I still remember the rubbish he did at Madrid. If Gyökeres is on the pitch, he should be taking the penalty. And look, in future, I have absolutely no problem with that. If Gyökeres takes the next penalty for Arsenal, great. I just think in this moment for Saka, it was an important goal for him to get. I think the weight of the goal for Saka was more important, especially when you consider how he returned from form from the injury last season to how he's returning in form from the injury this season. I think there is just far more pros than cons for Saka taking it than there is for Gyökeres taking it. And I hope that Gyökeres takes the next one. I hope that Gyökeres has the next penalty. Because I would agree with you. I think Gyökeres is arguably a better penalty taker than Saka. So I would be happy for him to take the next one. Not a problem at all. So, yeah. And to be fair to Arteta, Arteta did say, I was talking about this with Simon in the game. Simon Collins on the Standard. We pointed out that in pre-season, Arteta answered the question about penalties and said that he felt that Gyökeres was the best penalty taker. So maybe that's something we will see in the near future. Mikey says he had 3 good chances against West Ham. He's getting there. Strikers do miss chances. And this is also another very important point. Is I think the expectation, not just around Gyökeres, but around Arsenal in general, is reaching kind of absolutely silly levels. I do really believe that the discourse around Arsenal right now is reaching utterly mad levels. And what I mean by that is that we go into games against West Ham or Forest or Leeds, and there is almost like an entitlement that we're going to win this game 3-4, 5-6-0, or that we're going to go and play City at home and absolutely batter them, or we're going to go to Anfield and win at a canter, or win this game, or we should be doing more to win this game, and so on and so forth. And I get that to a degree in some circumstances, but it almost feels like people forget there's another 11 players on the field. And that really frustrates me at times in some of the discourse that we see around Arsenal. Against West Ham, we battered them. We were dominant. We restricted them to very little. They tried to get out at times, or we took the ball back quickly. We had some great chances. It easily could have been 3, 4, or 5. Same goes for the Olympiacos game. Could have easily been 3, 4, or 5. We could have beaten City. We could have beaten Liverpool. But there's still this undercurrent of what feels like underappreciation or a lack of excitement about what Arsenal are doing in this early part of the campaign. And I can't work out why. I'm struggling to work out why. Because we've been really good and we've been offered up a very difficult start to Arsenal's season. And on top of that, as I pointed out, when we did drop points against Liverpool, we did drop points against City, these are the teams that Arsenal the teams that won the league, in the last 2 seasons, also dropped points against. They dropped points against the team that finished second, i.e. Arsenal. It was because they beat the teams they were supposed to beat more consistently than Arsenal did that Liverpool and City won the league in the last 2 seasons. Not because they had better results against Arsenal in a 1-to-1 head-to-head match. And yet, if you look at all the games that Arsenal have played against teams that aren't called Manchester City and aren't called Liverpool, they've won them, and they've won them well. The Newcastle game was a tight game, but my goodness me, did we deserve to win that more handily than we actually did. Anyone thinking that Arsenal didn't deserve to win that game and win that game well, I don't know what game you watched, because Newcastle created barely anything and Arsenal were banging on the door for the majority of the game. We could have scored some more chances. We could have scored some more moments. The Timber chance, of course, stands out in my mind as a great opportunity that Arsenal didn't quite take. So I'm again, and obviously the penalty that Arsenal should have had in the first half would have been another opportunity. I think there was another. Did we hit the post in another moment, or am I thinking about Odegaard in the League Cup? I might be thinking about Odegaard in the League Cup. I feel like there was another really big chance. Did Eza have one just pushed around the post by Pope? I think in the first half, he had a volley that was pushed around the post by Pope as well. Like, we created some really big opportunities in this game against Newcastle and should have probably won it more handsomely. And thankfully we did. I think Trossard maybe as well. Calafiori you're pointing out too. Gyökeres hit the post. So in all these games, 5 goals against Leeds, 3 goals against Nottingham Forest, 2 goals against Olympiacos, 2 goals against West Ham, 2 goals against Newcastle. In the last 2 games, Arsenal lost those 2 fixtures last season. They've turned both of those into handy wins. And of course, we've got Fulham away next and Crystal Palace at home after that. There are 2 more games we didn't win last season. Win those 2 and all of a sudden you're looking a lot healthier. And also on top of that, and I'm not a betting man, and I know a lot of people don't like gambling, but I think there is some value to kind of odds and the data that goes alongside it. So just put the kind of, criticism of it aside for a second. Looking at what the bookies are saying about Arsenal this season, Arsenal are now very strong favourites for the title. Like, you're looking at the odds and they're less than evens. Arsenal are currently odds on for the title, whereas Liverpool, the odds for Liverpool are around 3-1 right now. And that can change. That can change in a weekend. 1 result, 2 results for each team can flip those odds on their head. Don't get me wrong about that. It's a volatile market. But that shows you after the run that Arsenal have had, and despite not beating Liverpool and not beating City, and despite Liverpool beating Arsenal, those that have to put a lot on the line and company reputation on the line are backing Arsenal big time to win the league this season by a lot. And it's not close at the moment in how Arsenal are being ranked alongside Liverpool. So again, I'm struggling with people's concerns. And I had been struggling even before we'd beaten Newcastle and beaten West Ham and beaten other sides as well. I'd always struggled with that. And yes, I know that some people pop up in the chat only when we lose, or only when we're not doing as well, or only when we're not top. And then they come back again when obviously we drop points in the game, and they'll return again, I'm sure. But still, it does baffle me somewhat in how Arsenal have kind of been talked about this season. But anyway, I've been talking for too long now and not taking many of your questions. And yeah, Donny's pointing out, you see Arsenal are odds on to win the Champions League. I don't know about the Champions League odds. I haven't seen those yet. Champions League winner odds. Let me have a quick look. Odds checker. PSG are currently favourites at the moment. It seems PSG are odds on by most to win the league, but it is very close with Arsenal. It's very close. Arsenal and PSG are very close, but both teams are currently the top 2 favourites for the competition. And that's why, when I got into debates about anyone who's not particularly... Opta. Apparently Opta are saying Arsenal. Opta odds Champions League winner. Let's have a look what Opta are saying. To be fair, I'm trying to get up-to-date predictions, and these seem to be a little bit out of date. Opta algorithm surprises. Change of favourite. So after the second match day of the Champions League, the continental landscape has shifted dramatically. Arsenal under Mikel Arteta are now tops Opta's predictions with an 18.1% chance of lifting the trophy. Liverpool, stunned by Galatasaray and Istanbul, sit at 14.7%, while PSG, last season's winners, are behind on 13.96%. So Opta have Arsenal as favourites. The bookies have them behind PSG only slightly. But this is what I'm saying, right? And if this isn't a trophy, that's what I would say first of all to that, is that this isn't a trophy. That's not something to celebrate. 7 games into a season being put as favourites to win something because of the bookies. And, Arsenal weren't my favourites at the beginning of the season. I don't think they should have been anyone's favourites at the beginning of the season because of the investment of Liverpool. And another topic I want to talk to you about is this idea that Liverpool are a team in transition. You've heard this phrase probably, or seen this phrase on social media in the last 24 hours. We want to talk about that as well. Liverpool were by far and away my favourites. They just won the league, and then they'd spent close to 400 million plus on a team. But I want to come back to that point that I continue to make with you when you speak to anybody who perhaps is very critical of Arteta in particular, or you see debates raging about this idea that if he doesn't do this, he's got to go, or he should have been gone by now. Look where Arsenal are. Look where Arsenal are now with Arteta in charge. Despite not winning the league or anything in the last 4 years plus from that 2020 FA Cup victory, outside of the, hold on, Saliba, what's it called? What's it called? Is it the Shield? Community Shield. Yes, Saliba, it's called a Community Shield. Like, other than that, Arsenal haven't won anything. And yet, look where we are. Look what people are saying about, look what people are predicting. For a team that people criticise openly and stringently and beyond the pale to talk about in a negative way, Arsenal are being ranked as favourites for the two biggest competitions that exist in this sport. So that for me is very telling. So let me just ask you then this question about this idea that Liverpool are a team in transition, and this comes from Sky Sports's what's it called, Sunday Supplement. That's what it's called. It's from the Sunday Supplement, and Jason Burt of the Telegraph, who I have a lot of time for, by the way. I think Jason does some really good work, and he's a lovely bloke as well, which does help. But I think the Sunday Supplement section and the comments around Liverpool being a team in transition have really irked people. And this idea, because it's not just being talked about by Jason, it's been talked about by a few people. Let me just see if I can find the quote exactly or the comments. I'm in that position where I'd love to play you the clip, but I just don't know if I'm going to get copyright claimed for it. And I don't really want to do that. But effectively, the talk is that Liverpool are a team in transition because obviously, and that's the tagline of the tweet. But if you watch the video, I'd recommend it's about 1:40. I mean, I'll put it into the chat box for you so you can watch the whole clip in your own time. But as I say, watch the whole clip because I think Jason talks about it in quite a balanced way. I agree to an extent. Liverpool have won the league. They won the league with a team under Slot that was pretty much unchanged from the team that Jurgen Klopp left behind. The only changes they made were Chiesa, who spent most of the season injured, and I think Mamardashvili, the goalkeeper, that also didn't sign properly. So they didn't really change anything at all about that squad. They didn't change anything really about that team. So when you then make as many signings as Liverpool did, and if we have a quick look at all the signings they did make, because I think they made so many, I'm going to end up forgetting how many they actually made in that single summer. So in the summer of 2025, Liverpool made, is it 8 signings, 9 signings? They signed Isak for 120, 30 million, Wirtz for 120, 115 odd million, Ekitike for about 85, 90 million, Gyökeres for 35 million, Frimpong for 32 million, Giovanni Leone for like 25 million, and brought in Freddie Woodman, who I think is a goalkeeper, as well to the group too. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 signings, right? And £400 million spent. Now, however way you want to paint that up, that's a lot of change. That's a lot of changes. Now, I don't have an issue with Liverpool being described as a team whose squad is in transition. But what you have to do is, if you're going to say that, you have to say that Arsenal are too. You have to say that Arsenal are too. That's the only way that you can fairly say that Liverpool are a team in transition, is if you also say that Arsenal are a team in transition. Now, if we have a quick look at Liverpool's lineup, right? Liverpool's lineup has changed from a starting 11 in 4 positions. Isak at striker or Ekitike at striker. Slot doesn't tend to play the two of them. It's usually one or the other. So that's the centre forward position has changed. The striker, Darwin Nunez, is gone. Diogo Jota very sadly passed away. Ekitike and Isak are in. The number 9 position has changed. So that's one. Gyökeres at left back, change from Robertson. Still there, but Gyökeres is in. Frimpong at right back. Trent Alexander-Arnold gone. That's 3 positions. And then Florian Wirtz, 1 midfield position, who, by the way, is having a pretty stinky start to the season. You know, he's blanked in every single game he's played so far this campaign. He's only scored, I think, for Germany. So not a great start. He's got 1 assist, and that was in the Community Shield. No goals, no assists in 9 games across the Premier League or the Champions League for Florian Wirtz. It's not been a good start. And it also has, to some degree, unbalanced Liverpool's midfield. And not only that, it's changed it in a way where they're still kind of responding to it. Do you know who else is also responding to a big change in a certain type of position? Arsenal. As we've just been talking about, Viktor Gyokeres and that centre-forward change is a big change for Arsenal. A massive change for Arsenal. So that's 4 big changes. You've got striker, midfield, both fullback roles. Okay? That's the 4 positions that Liverpool have changed from their starting 11. Now let's look at Arsenal. As we've just mentioned, Gyökeres, big change. Massive profile difference, of course, from that potential position. Second big change on the left-hand side, or maybe in the middle, but particularly on the left at the start of his time with Arsenal, Eberechi Eze. Very different style of wide player when used there. Can also play in the middle, but very different style of player on that left-hand side. Now the number 6 role. Martin Zubimendi has changed that position drastically. He's a very different type of player to Thomas Partey, very different style of player to that position. They've had to change things hugely, and that midfield, as a result, is evolving. Now, it's evolving quickly, and that's because Zubimendi is an excellent, excellent player. And so we are, of course, and for me, that's arguably for many the most important role in a team like Arsenal, in a system like Arsenal, is the number 6 role and how you connect your defence, the midfield, and then to the forward line as well. Hugely influential role. Now, that 4th position, you could argue, is taken up by a number of different roles. Because obviously Saka was injured, so Noni Madueke has come into the team and played quite a bit, and that's had to be transitioned. That's a difference in that role. Saliba's had issues, so Mosquera's had to play and has hit the ground running in his position. So you look, of course, at all of these factors, and Arsenal and in my opinion, Liverpool are going through a very similar level of transition in terms of their squad and their first team squads in particular. I don't think it is fair to say that if Liverpool are in transition, then Arsenal aren't. I think if you're saying that Liverpool are a team in transition, you have to say the same for Arsenal. I haven't got an issue with someone saying that Liverpool are a team in transition. I don't take issue with that at all. But I do take issue with it if you aren't applying the same energy to Arsenal, because you absolutely should be applying the same energy to Arsenal as well. And the winner of the league this season, in my view, is going to be the team that manages that transition and most effectively implements their new signings into the squad. Now, also, Abdul Hakim says, what about Manchester City? Because Manchester City are also a team who have made significant changes to their squad to a degree. Reinders is a brand new influence in their midfield. Kevin De Bruyne is gone. Ryan Aït-Nouri, of course, has come into the side to play at left back and is competing with a number of players like Kusanov or with Gvardiol on the left-hand side. Their goalkeeping position has changed dramatically. Ederson has been one of the most influential players in that Manchester City 11 for the last however many years, involved in every single one of those major titles that they won. Ederson has been a huge part of that. James Trafford, of course, coming in to also change things there too. So, and Ryan Cherky, of course, hasn't really played this season because he's obviously been injured so far. He's a talented player, and I'm curious about what Ryan Cherky can bring to that City team. But City as well have had some big changes to their 11. Rodri is coming back from injury and has been injured again. So they're having to deal with that situation even more greatly and even more stringently. And if you look at the business that they did in January, Omar Marmoush, Nico Gonzalez, Kusanov, Vita Reis, I think has gone on loan this season. Again, you're kind of looking at a transitional period as well for City because of signings made from January, just 8 months ago. So, and beyond. So all 3 of the title-chasing sides have made big changes. I think where you're going to see the the bias or the inconsistency is if you see somebody talking about Liverpool being in transition, just see if they get asked a question about whether they think Arsenal in transition. That's where you're going to see it. So you can't just go off when someone says Liverpool are a team in transition. You can, however, say that they are being biased or inconsistent if they don't also see that about Arsenal. Because Arsenal as well are in as much transition as either of City or Liverpool are. And as I said, the team that wins the league this season are going to be the team, the manager that manages their new signings, integrates their new players the best. It is as simple as that. The team that wins the league this season will be because the manager successfully integrated new players better than both of the other two. That's the reality. That is the one. Let's get some of your thoughts on that. Let's go up a little bit more in the chat. Shunetta says, everybody is brand new for City. They've been signing since January. They will still sign in January as well. Mike says, the difference is that Liverpool have organisationally and strategically made holics of their continuity. I don't know what that means. It's bad management. I mean, Arsenal have also changed things behind the scenes quite dramatically as well. Tim Lewis has gone. Andrea Berta is in, and did different roles. They're not linked specifically, but it is big change. The board has changed. So there's been big changes there too. Loss says, disagree. Liverpool have changed their fundamentals. Arsenal have maintained their continuity. I mean, Loss, with respect, you're utterly and entirely incorrect because Arsenal have changed two utterly pivotal positions to their team. Two positions that are so important to the way that Arsenal play, create, build up, finish, have been overhauled hugely with Zubimendi and, of course, also with Gyökeres coming in too. So you couldn't be more wrong, in my view, in that opinion. As I say, with respect. Mark says, if that's true, I rate our chances for Arteta to be the best of both Pep and Slot. I guess we will wait and see. Pablo says Jamie O'Hara is a biased pundit on the mainstream media. That guy is a Arsenal fan secretly. I believe he's too obsessed with the Arsenal players and manager. I think he's very much a Spurs fan. Very much a Spurs fan. Shunita says, Tom, this Liverpool team is overrated and ain't winning no league. It's, by the way, between Arsenal and City. Jerome says, I've always said Liverpool are like a blaze, burning bright but burning out quickly, whereas Arsenal are like a steady flame. And the Premier League is a marathon, not a sprint. Daniel says, have you seen the clip of Jason Cundy celebrating Chelsea's winner at the weekend? So funny because he would have been ripping us over celebrating. I haven't seen Jason Cundy's critical of Arsenal celebrating yet, so maybe point that out to me if you know where I can find that clip of him being critical of Arsenal celebration. So feel free. Mikey says Liverpool carried out a transfer window seemingly based on desire and ego, but not footballing insight, and now they're paying for it. Mark says, I think Loss's point is the players that we've brought in have made a smoother integration than Liverpool's. It's hard to disagree. Look at the fullbacks and Wirtz and even Isak. I mean, yeah, but that's down to who Arsenal have targeted. That's down to the manager. That's down to the other players in the squad. It doesn't mean that both teams aren't still in a transitional period. If the transitional period is shorter for Arsenal in terms of integrating their players, that's a credit to the coach, to the club, to the identification of the specific players that we've bought. That's a credit to their teammates. That's a credit to the environment. It's not to do with the idea that one is in transition and one is not. They've both had transition periods. It's just about who manages that transition period the best and therefore shortens it the most. Because in that case, the team that shortens it the most, you'd imagine, will get the most success out of their brand new players. Jason says, or Jarson, sorry, says this league might come down to which of the three top teams builds chemistry the quickest. Arsenal, Liverpool, and City all strengthened heavily, but now it's about turning talent into cohesion. Paul says City have spent 600 million this year and bought in players. Liverpool spent almost as much in the summer and bought in players that we spent 300 million. And in the summer, bought in players, all are in transition. I mean, if you do look at the amount of money that's been spent by City, of course, and Arsenal, I don't know if it's as much as 600 million. I don't think it's that big. I think it's closer to 400 million for the year in terms of January and the summer. But I don't know where the 600 millions come from, Paul. Maybe you can break it down for me and make it make sense. But it's still more than Arsenal have spent in the positions from January to the summer. Who has brought in the most in 2025? It's Liverpool, and then it's and then it's City, and then it's us. Sam says, how difficult is it to separate from work when you're writing at the games? Good question. It's got easier. It's easier with time, I think, to celebrate it. I think that I think what's important about when you're writing is you kind of have to, in some ways, detach your fan brain has to go like that. I can't always switch it off completely. It's really hard to switch it off, especially in high intensity games. Like Real Madrid last season at the Emirates, when I was sitting next to Harry, so obviously I was sitting next to someone who was commentating on the game, which made it even better because I'd rarely get to sit next to Harry. And for the record, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I think Harry is at fault for why we lost the Champions League semi-final first leg. Just going to put this out there, and you can hop over to Harry's channel when he does his live show later, and you can tell him that I said this if he's not watching already. But Harry broke a superstitious rule that emerged from that game that, as far as I'm aware, Arsenal were going to try and make this happen, right? So I never sit on the back row. Usually I'm sitting on the second row, sometimes the third row. I'm usually always on that second row. The fourth row is where the commentators sit mainly. There are a few seats for media and writers, but on that row is mainly commentators. But for the Real Madrid game, I suspiciously, don't know why it happened, and I loved it because I think it's one of the best views you can get, hence why the commentators sit there. I was sat next to Harry. So I've never sat with Harry for a game, but for the Real Madrid home leg, I sat with Harry. And we won 3-0. And it was great. And I had a word with some of the people who organise where the media sit. And I was like, look, I'm not going to tell you where to sit me. But all I'm going to say is that I've never sat on the fourth row before. I've never sat with Harry before. But when we did, we won 3-0 and beat Real Madrid. Now, I'm reliably told that the plan was that me and Harry would sit next to each other again. However, somebody didn't go in the press box that day. Somebody decided they wanted to go as a fan. Somebody wasn't holding up their end of the deal. And as a result, I didn't sit in the back row for the game, and I sat in my normal seat for that fixture in the second row, and we lost against PSG. So somebody is at fault for Arsenal losing the Champions League. Now, you could argue that it's the 11 players on the field. You could argue it's something to do with the manager. You could argue it was some of the mistakes we made in the opening minutes. Or, if you're a superstitious person, you could argue that a certain Mr. Harry Symeou cost Arsenal a Champions League final. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm gonna put out there. All right? That's all I'm gonna say. I don't know if he even went as a. I don't. Maybe he didn't go to the game. Maybe there was a reason. I'm trying to remember perfectly. If he's watching, he's probably cursing me right now. But for whatever reason it was, he can argue his point on his show later on the Chronicles of a Gooner. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already. But for some reason, he wasn't. I can't laugh because laughing makes me cough. It is shifting, by the way. I haven't been coughing too much. It's just when I laugh, I end up coughing. So yes, but anyway, I've kind of got off, as I do, on a bit of a tangent there. But yes, it is difficult to separate the work, especially in high intensity games, because and sometimes now because of the whole restructure of the company, and sometimes, as you can see, I'm doing work for the papers, hence why there's a stack of papers sitting on my desk these days. Come on, Win, sit still. Thank you. It's a challenge because sometimes now what will happen is for instance, let's say in the highest volume of work situation, which was this season, Bilbao away, just to give you an idea of what I have to do during a match day. 1, I have to watch the game. 2, I've got to do player ratings, which obviously get done for the full-time whistle. 3, I've got to set up the press conference live blog, which also goes live on the full-time whistle, ready for Mikel Arteta to speak after the game. In Bilbao, I had to do, on top of that, the match report for print, which was you have to submit a match report on the 85th minute. because obviously it's print. There's a time pressure to it. There's an attachment to that. They've got to have the, it's just this the way it goes. It has to happen. And also, I had to do the quotes piece after the press conference. So that's where you kind of listen to the quotes in the press conference and you turn that into a quick story and you turn that around. All the while, I was, as you know, deathly ill. I was so bad like that day. I woke up at 3:00 in the morning on the day of the match, cold sweats, didn't do a show in the morning, as you know, didn't do a show the next day either. I was not well at all. I was so ill. And I stayed away from everybody as best I could. Thankfully, the seats were kind of spaced out in the press box in Bilbao. So that was what I was doing. So all the way, and on top of that, a blog. Sometimes there's a blog to do as well. Thankfully, I think for that game it was covered, which I really appreciated by someone else on our central team. I think Josh Holland did it actually. Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot going on during the games. There's a lot going on during those fixtures when you're working, and it's something that people don't realize. And I think as well, like, I get battered sometimes for my player ratings. Sometimes my player ratings get quite a lot of stick, and I've disagreed with people about my rating at times, but then I'll watch a game back and I'll be like, oh, you know what, I did actually underrate that. For instance, I underrated Zubimendi at Old Trafford. Like, I remember that game like it was yesterday now, having rewatched it a number of times. But I think I gave Zubimendi like a 6, and he was easily an 8 that game. He was unbelievably good. He was involved with every single transition, every single turnover, every single counter-attack. He was excellent at Old Trafford. But you just end up you're doing so much, you kind of miss stuff. So, and on top of that, I'm also an Arsenal fan. So there's that emotional element attached to it. And obviously there's that element involved in it. But yeah, match reports it's a new thing to me. Obviously, I've just kind of started doing a lot more print stuff. Match reports are a bit new, and they are a challenge because you have to submit a match report on like the 85th minute. So imagine like our Chelsea writer in the Brighton game or in the Liverpool game, our Chelsea writer Bobby Vincent is doing a match report when Brighton have won in the last minute against Chelsea, or Chelsea have won in the last minute against Liverpool. Like, imagine the pressure that's associated with those games when you're writing a match report that needs to be in on the 85th minute, and then in the last minute you've got to change your whole piece and resubmit it. It is chaos. It's tough. It's a challenge. It's exciting. I love it, but it is a challenge. And all the while you've got to watch the game as well. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a real challenge. And yeah, I mean, Akintobi says that's interesting. What happens if there's a last minute goal? If you have to submit your match report by the 85th minute, you just have to send in your changes as quick as you can. But also, the game's finished. I've got to run down to the press conference. I've got to do the press conference blog. I've got to hear the quotes, type the quotes up, do the every word transcript for the FL website, perhaps do a quote piece for print. So it's chaos. Like, you're frantically typing away, trying to correct everything. What I tend to do, and what I did in Bilbao, because obviously the game was kind of on an edge for a while. It was 0-0 until like the 70-something minute. What I did was I wrote 2 introductions. So I'd written an introduction to the article, Arsenal drop points in Bilbao after 0-0 draw, or Arsenal drop points, something along those lines. And I wrote like a little introduction if Arsenal did not win that game. And then alongside that, I started writing as if they would won the game, obviously not knowing who the scorers were, but just like what the implications of that were. So you kind of have to write 2 pieces at times side by side. That's why if Arsenal score early, just think that the first thought, or second thought after your joy and elation, is that if Arsenal score in a game early, it's a little bit more of a relief for me and for other journalists who are writing match reports in a game at that time, because it is really difficult. It's really, really difficult. And yeah, there's definitely a improvement about that when things go well. We haven't got long left, so we're going to be taking some more of your thoughts over the next. Yes, Claire, get the violins out. Poor Tom. Yeah, I get to go to games. I get there for free, and it's, I get to go to all the games. What a horrible life I lead. Poor me, having to write articles at Arsenal. I know. It's. I'm not trying to sound like I'm moaning. I'm not moaning. I'm just trying to give you a picture of what it's like to work at a game and to be writing at a game. I'm just trying to paint the picture of what it's like. Trust me, I'm not complaining. I love my job. I love what I do. I'm very privileged to have this position. I'm just trying to paint you a picture of what it's like to do the job. So, yeah, that's kind of where, and it does help that Arsenal are pretty good these days. But I was doing a podcast yesterday, and I was saying about how, you know, it's when Arsenal lose, I lose twice, because I lose because I'm an Arsenal fan, and then I lose again because I've got to write, you know, pieces and talk about Arsenal over and over and over and over and over again for the whole week that they lose. It was the Dublin Arsenal podcast. I've retweeted it if you want to go and listen to it. But it was a great chat with Jonathan Giles yesterday. If you want to go and give that a listen, I have retweeted it on my main X page at Tom Canton Media on X. So if you want to go and give that a listen, it was about 40 minutes or so talking about a lot of topics. It wasn't just it wasn't just the game. It was like on getting into Arsenal. It was on Arteta. It was on trophies. It was on loads of stuff. It was on favourite Arsenal goals. It was a rather holistic conversation. So go and give that a listen if you would like to. Amesy says, Tom, your hard work is not lost on us. Thank you, Amesy. I appreciate that. Jaco says, you've exploited it more or less. Thanks. Yes, definitely. That's how it's worked. John says, hey, Tom, what about Neville's comments about Maresca's celebration? It's way worse than Carragher's. He loves the celebration and says it's well worth being sent off for. Now, that's interesting because I think Neville was quite critical of, I don't want to say it wrong. Let me see if I can find his comments. Neville Maresca. Let's just do an on-the-fly comparison. It says well worth. Let's find the comments. They absolutely deserve that. Chelsea, they have been brilliant the last 15 minutes. Last week on the swim, Maresca has been sent off, but he won't care about that. Well worth being sent off for, he says. Now, if I type in Gary Neville, Arteta celebration, Luton 2024. Let's find it. I'm sure there was comments made about Arteta celebrating the game at Luton. I don't know if I can find it. I might be, as I say, I might be wrong. That's why I'm doing it live, because I can be like, oh, it was wrong. But I can't find it at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. I can't seem to find the Luton one, but I'll see if I can I'll see if I can in the next episode. But I can't seem to find it at the moment. But I'm sure there was comment. I'm sure there was criticism of Arteta's celebration at Luton. I swear I remember that. But until I find it, we have to assume that hasn't happened. Johan says, you're only human, Tom. Just because you're doing something you love and enjoy doesn't mean it doesn't take a toll as well. And yeah, that's for sure. You know, and it's been up until recently, it's been a tough year. 2025 has been a really tough year. I'll be very honest. It's been, in the context of this job, it's been tougher for some other people. That's never lost on me. Some very good friends of mine, sadly, obviously were made redundant earlier in the year, and we went through a big structural change. And as I spoke about this at great length, and thankfully, some of them have found new employment, which is brilliant. Shout out to Tom Coley in particular, who's already found some new employment, which is great for him. But obviously, my boss left. A very good friend of ours, Rob Guest, left his post as well. And we've lost some really amazing people. One of my editors, Joe Doyle, has moved to a different part of the company, and that's really painful for me because he's a very good friend. So this year's been worse for other people, but 2025 has been really tough year, just on like at a personal level. But we've moved on, we move forward from that, and Arsenal in a good place. I'm in a good place now, and I'm very grateful to have you lot with me as always, every single morning, talking Arsenal rubbish every day. So whether you agree with me or not, so I'm looking forward to it. And Claire says, Tom, you say people are allowed to change their minds, so I assume it's okay for Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher to change theirs. I mean, if you read my tweet this morning, that's pretty much how I worded my tweet about Jamie's comments about Maresca. The tweet is, the naive side of me wants to believe that Jamie Carragher's recent comments on Enzo Maresca's celebrations are a sign of change. But I fear the contradiction and therefore hypocrisy from his views on Martin Odegaard's own actions are still the norm. So I'm fearful that he's not changing his mind, but I'm open to the idea that he is. So absolutely, Claire, they are well within the realms of hopefully changing their minds about celebration and how they talk about it, how they view it. But we won't know until we hear comments about Arsenal's celebrations at some point. I guess we're gonna have to see if that's the way. Shanita says, "What a show, Tom! Big up the comment section. I've laughed all through it. Well, even when I was talking about how tough a year I've had, you were laughing. That's just mean." I'm only joking. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in, people. Really appreciate your time. I hope you've had a really enjoyable morning with me, and then join me again, of course, tomorrow. Very much appreciate you all being here. I've got work to do now, a lot more articles to write, and I'll be back with you tomorrow morning to discuss any more information. Just as an update on Martin Odegaard, I've tried to chase down this story to get more information on his injury. So far, no clarification on how serious the MCL injury is at the moment. Hopefully, we get an update soon, but at the moment, no clarity on that yet. Of course, Mikel Arteta will face the media next Friday, next week. But at the moment, no update as of yet. So hopefully there we get some updates soon on the situation and how bad and how significant a problem it is. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.